Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor, too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days. Or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store, and Osceola subscribers get 20% off in store and online with their digital membership cards. Alumni Hall. It's the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. For more on the Seminoles, including Osceola's coverage from veteran Seminole insiders, message boards, Osceola virtual happy hours, and more, go to theosceola.com.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines podcast, presented by Alumni Hall, where you will find officially licensed gear for the entire family. Please visit Alumni Hall at alumnihall.com or at their Tallahassee store located at 1817 Thomasville Road. My name is Pat Burnham, host of Seminole Sidelines, and today I'm joined by Osceola publisher Jerry Cutts, managing editor Bob Ferrante, recruiting analyst Charles Fishbein, and former FSU offensive lineman and current Osceola football analyst Mark Salva. All right, guys. First of all, thanks for joining me. And, of course, it's one of the most uneventful national signing days of any February that I have been alive. I cannot ever remember a day where the school that I was working for, cheering for, or covering did not sign a prospect on National Signing Day. And as of the time of this recording, Florida State has not officially released the signing of an offensive lineman Antavius Woody, although he has said publicly that he has signed with Florida State on Instagram and had one of those things. But that seems, and of course, Bob, as we talked before we started, they've also added some preferred walk-ons and announced those kids today. So kind of a very slow day for a National Signing Day. And Bob, obviously you covered Florida State longer than any of us here. How strange was it for you to wake up on the first Wednesday in February and from a football perspective have very little to do?
Yeah, it is weird. I mean, it feels like a day where usually you're setting the alarm for before 6. You're trying to get rolling, get caffeinated. And usually FSU football is just cranking out the announcements on Twitter and announcing it to everybody. And today, like you said, nothing really going. Now, FSU football can't announce it, but some kids are announcing, 4 guys in particular so far, that they are preferred walk-ons, including a quarterback. So, it's definitely a highly unusual times that we're in where everything is just kind of shifted all the way to December with that early signing period.
Fish, you've been doing this a long time, and you've been covering Florida State and following their recruiting. Did you wake up or think any time over the last 3 weeks that you wake up on the traditional National Signing Day and they not really sign a scholarship kid?
Well, you kind of saw this come in the last couple of years with the early signing day, and it took a lot of the juice out of the first Wednesday in February. It's kind of disappointing. It seems like, you look at I was talking to a friend of mine about it the other day. You look at the NFL, they just seem to get everything right, from how they handle their regular season to their postseason to how they handle their draft, how they handle the whole offseason. Like, college football has gone the total opposite way. Like, National Signing Day is a big event for college football. And I really believe with the way coaches are hired and fired now, and they're really not the first class is basically a wasted class. I think that college football's got to look at this thing and say, all right, let's just have one day again. And maybe they go to an early signing period, maybe in August, maybe where 5 or 6 or 7 kids commit and sign. But you still have the original signing day. So you have this, it makes the sport that much more fun, especially during this time when there's really not a whole lot to talk about until spring football comes along. And I think college football, the people that run it, the universities, they should really think about pushing it back to February. And it will help a lot of the schools, especially the ones that have these transition classes where they can't really go out and you're asking them to go out and evaluate kids in like a week and a half or 2 with the early signing period. and try to sign guys and put together a class. And you've seen the ratios of these guys hitting are not very good moving forward. But there's really no reason for a second signing day if you're going to just have one or two guys sign on that day, for these schools.
Well, Mark, one of the questions I want to ask you, and obviously since we've talked about Antavius before at length, I don't want to, until he's officially signed, I don't want to do an eval for a kid that may or may not be here. But one of the things we were talking about before we came on air was with the advent of the transfer portal, and since we were prepared to talk about an offensive lineman anyway, one of the things that I've been talking with some people about is from a high school offensive and defensive lineman's perspective, to me it seems like there's going to be no other position at the high school level that's going to be hurt more by the way schools are using the portal than high school offensive lineman and defensive line prospect. And the more marginal you are, the more punitive the transfer portal is going to be to you. Am I wrong in my opinion of that? And Fish, I want you to weigh in on this too. To me, with now that we've seen a full cycle with the NIL and with the one-time transfer rule, it seems like to me the kids on the high school level that are going to get hurt are going to be offensive linemen. Do you agree with that?
To a point, I think. You would always like to have a kid that's kind of matriculated into a university already and has been developed a little bit. If you're getting a transfer kid that's, young, has, 3 years or so to play, you definitely take that over a high school kid because you kind of know what you got already. There's, the difference between high school and college obviously is a huge jump, especially if you've taken a kid that's played in a lesser league in high school. That jump is tremendous, especially when you're talking about, Power 5 level schools. And so, to your point about offensive and defensive linemen, the biggest jump is the difference between the line of scrimmage in high school and the line of scrimmage in college. And so you get a kid who's naturally bigger than everybody else in high school, and he pretty much dominates. And, you try to tease out some characteristics that you like about him. But when it comes down to it, if the competition, he's the biggest, strongest guy on the field just about every week, you really don't know what you got until he step on campus. And so, if you want more of a sure thing and a closer evaluation to what you're getting from a kid coming into your program, obviously you want a kid that's been at that level, at a Power 5 level, or even, a Group of 5 level, because he's gone against that kind of competition. He's matured a little bit more, and you kind of know what you're getting a little better, So if you had the choice between, I have a chance to this transfer, or I have a kid who may be an elite talent, but you're not exactly sure, you're going to take the better enough quantity, I would think. And of course, I'm not talking about the 5-star, Mary Sims kind of kid where everybody knows he's a can't-miss kind of guy. I'm talking about these guys that are, you're trying to tease something out that you like about a kid, or maybe something that you don't like. So, yeah, to your point, but every position is like that. To some extent, but I think the biggest gap between high school and college is obviously on the line of scrimmage.
Well, Fish, at the end of the day, Florida State has officially signed or has 25 newcomers between the early enrollees, the transfer portal, and the 4 guys that signed letters of intent that will not be here until the summer. Kind of what's your overall take? They did add Trey Benson since the last time we did an Osceola podcast. What do you think they get out of Benson, and where do you think they go from here between now and the start of fall camp?
I really would like to see them bring in another quarterback, someone that could come in and compete with Travis. We know what some of his off the field issues are as far as health wise, that it limits him to practice. I don't feel comfortable going into a next season, which I think, I don't want to say it's a must win season, but I do think they got to get to 7 or 8 wins. I don't want it to come down to that your quarterback went out for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and those 3 weeks were lost to games you could have won because you had a quality backup. It's nothing against A.J. Duffy. I think he's going to be a hell of a quarterback down the road. I don't believe he needs to play as a freshman, unless he's forced to. And what we've seen from Tate, I don't know how far along Tate is to really picked up the slack for 2 weeks. So I'd like for them to bring in one more quarterback. I personally would have liked to see them bring in, try to get a home run threat or somebody that gives them that ability at the running back position. They did a good job at wide receiver in the end with the transfer portal, but overall, there were some spots that they could have filled in. I mean, the O-line, D-line, when you talk about it, I think you bring in as many of those guys as possible. I've talked about it many times. It's a numbers game a lot of times. You're not, on the O-line and D-line, those guys aren't going to all make it. But if you bring in enough bodies, and they're bringing in 7 O-linemen, if they get 3 starters and 2 quality backups, they did their job. They hit a home run, and that's all you can expect. As far as O-line and D-line, I mean, I've had in the last 2 days, 3 days, at least 4 or 5 college coaches call me, and they're looking for high school O-line and D-line. One of the kids that kind of fell through the cracks and he fell down to UCF was Leighton Nelson. He was a kid I liked a lot. He ended up signing with Vanderbilt today. So there are guys that I think can benefit by holding out. I mean, Ahmad Moten was a kid out of Cardinal Gibbons, a D tackle that he ended up having a great playoff run. And that kid went from probably an FBS, I mean, a group of 5 kid to Oklahoma. He ended up signing with Miami today, but they beat out Oklahoma for the kid. So those guys are always going to be needed. There's never enough O-line and D-line. You ask these coaches. I mean, like I said, I spoke to one coach today. He's like, Fish, I need 2 D linemen. It's like there's never enough of these kids. If you could play and you play up front, I think even with the the transfer portal, still a lot of these kids have value on the up front.
Bob, what are your thoughts? This recruiting class kind of is what it is until after spring practice now. I mean, I think we all expect that we'll see some turnover both ways after spring, either guys coming in and possibly guys leaving once these depth charts become of course, they don't release depth charts anymore because they don't want to lose these kids. But anyway,
exactly.
What are your thoughts on what's going on now that we've reached February 2nd, 2022?
Yeah, I think short term the roster is going to stabilize, but then the portal will open back up pretty soon. I mean, the spring game will be April 9th. I would think, the 10th or 11th, it's going to start to swing open with some Florida State guys leaving. And they've got some room to play with this, 7 departures. You can add up to 7. So you've got a capacity to bring in, a total of 32 guys total. So, yeah, it's definitely – we're going to see guys after the spring. They're going to say, hey, I'm not feeling like I'm getting enough reps. I'm not feeling like I'm where I think I belong. And that's where differences of opinions don't line up. And that's why you see guys transfer. It's a good thing to have the transfer portal for those guys. And for Florida State, they're going to have to find a quarterback, probably a pass rusher, maybe some other guys too, but they'll have that opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's over. I think not by a long shot, but there's going to be some attrition all over college football once all these spring practices come to a close late April. Listen, Florida State may not have added many football players over the last couple of days, but they have certainly added some support staff, including a name that is familiar to Florida State fans, Corey Fuller. Left his head job at East Gaston High School. He's been a long-time head coach in the state of Florida. Of course, played for some of Florida State's great defenses back in the early 90s and had a long professional career with the Vikings, among others, Browns. But he has joined the staff as in some type of recruiting role, player development, player personnel. I'm not exactly sure what his official title is, but brought in a former Seminole, one that resonates with a lot of fans from the glory days. Mark, your thoughts on the hire? I want everybody to, talk a little bit about what they know about Corey.
Yeah, I was there with Corey when he came from Tallahassee Records, and back in I think 90, maybe 91. I'm not exactly sure, but he was a great player. Obviously, that dude was the smoothest running guy. I was like, he ran 4.3, and his legs would be going 100 miles an hour, and his head would never move. He was smooth as ice, and obviously had a career in the NFL. Looks like he's had a real successful career as a high school football coach. he's a guy, hopefully, with a lot of contacts that can help accelerate our relationships in the high school ranks and contribute to recruiting. I mean, he knows the Florida State experience firsthand. He can probably articulate it pretty well, and he's got a great personality that will connect with a lot of kids. And so, yeah, it's he's a loyal Seminole. I mean, what more can you ask? So that's on the surface, it looks like a great hire.
Jerry, hey, we'll let you get involved in the podcast. What do you think about Corey being hired?
I like it. I think Corey's I think he'll bring a little bit of that Mickey Andrews toughness.
Bob, let's get your take on Corey. And
I've interacted with Corey just a little bit through the years. He coached Derek Kelly, offensive lineman here, and he was very active in kind of shaping Derek Kelly's career as a high school lineman. Saw him as a tackle, throughout the high school level and building him up through getting him ready for college. I think you're getting a mentor. You're getting a mentor, a guy who's played at Florida State in the NFL for a long time. You're also getting a guy with a lot of relationships across the Panhandle and throughout the state. And those kind of relationships never hurt when you're trying to recruit guys to Tallahassee or get guys purely to a camp and then to see if Florida State is the right place for them. So from that standpoint, can't hurt to have a guy who's potentially a really good mentor for young guys who want to get to the NFL one day.
Yeah, I'm happy for Corey. I've known him, played against high school ball against him, obviously played at Florida State when my father was there. And he may have the strongest personality of any operations guy I've ever met. So he would be fun to hang out with Corey in the office. I can assure you of that. So Fish, one of the guys they added to the staff was Kewan Ratcliffe. He played at Florida, was at Florida in an off the field recruiting position. What do you know about Kewan and what are his strengths? What does he bring to the staff?
I mean, Kewan has connections to like Central Florida. He had a 7-on-7 team called the Rat Pack. So he's been in the 7-on-7 circuit. He knows the guys that are involved in that, which can't hurt. A lot of those kids have the relationships that you build are no longer with the high school coaches. A lot of times they're with these coaches that have these 7-on-7 teams. So Kewan has a good hold of Central Florida, the Orlando area, I believe, and up into Gainesville and some of those schools. So hopefully he could bring something to the table from a recruiting standpoint in those areas where Florida State could do very well in recruiting. So.
Yeah, well, they've made a couple more announcements today, and I don't have the background on either of those two guys, so we'll talk about them. But they have added a general manager, and I'm sure that position will probably be in charge of probably the portal as opposed to the high schools where you have Bartow and Kenyatta and now Kewan. So, but that guy will probably, my understanding, if I'm reading the tea leaves right, is that guy will probably handle the portal, which you're going to have a high school recruiting department and a transfer portal portion of your recruiting department. So it could be getting to be very interesting. Listen, obviously, one of the other things that has happened now, Bob, I did want to ask you, I know you may have to leave us. We've had a chance to spend some time with all the early signees and transfers, or at least most of them, over the course of the last 2 weeks. And, of course, I don't think there's any more entertaining true freshmen that I've ever been around. I mean, unless this kids should be in high school. Kanai Charlton wowed every member of the press 2 weeks ago with his appearance in front of the media. Was funny, thoughtful, articulate. He's got a heck of a future in front of him, and he's one of those guys that you hope is successful selfishly from the media standpoint, because you want him to be a spokesperson for Florida State, because you didn't get any canned message from Kanaya. You got what he was thinking. Saw a unique personality and a kid that has a lot of interest and is very honest in front of the media. But anyway, I know Duffy's been in front. Everybody wants to know about the quarterback. But just kind of your impressions on some of the kids that have talked to the media since they've gotten to Florida State.
Yeah, Kanaya Charlton is probably one of the most impressive interviews that we've done in the last, decade or more with some of these newcomers, and with not very much media training, I will say, because he's come in and he kind of kind of blew us away with some of his frank honesty about a lot of things, telling us that the first conversation with Alex Atkins was the coach telling him that he sucked and that there were things he needed to change about his technique and how he played. But that kind of honesty built a relationship, I think. And so that's kind of the big takeaway, I would say, with a lot of these interviews are this coaching staff is kind of built on being as candid as possible about where the program is, where the prospect is, and kind of taking the relationship from there. Specifically in Duffy's case, I think the big takeaways are he's willing to learn. He loves to study film. Obviously, a coach's son, he kind of grew up around the game for years and years. Honestly, knew Coach Norvell going way, way back to being a preteen when Norvell was, recruiting in Arizona and California. So the Duffy family, knew Coach Norvell going back a long time, almost a decade. So it's very much a relationship business, right? We all kind of know that, but that's kind of how Coach Norvell is built. I think this class in particular, whether it's a transfer or a high school kid, it's through years and years of kind of cultivating these relationships.
It's been fun to watch these kids get in front of the media and learn a little bit about them that you don't know. Jerry, I know you've had a chance to sit in with some of the new signees and the transfer portal guys. Kind of what's been your kind of takeaways from some of these interviews?
Well, the first thing I was going to say is on Charleston. I don't know if Mark remembers. He knew Jamie Dukes when Jamie was a freshman at FSU. Mark came a year behind Jamie, but Jamie was just as precocious as what you saw, just as candid. He had a very, very confident air about himself and very comfortable talking to old reporters. So that was the thing that I remembered about. Of all the players I've interviewed, Jamie Dukes kind of stood out as instantly the best interview. Well, and the other thing that stood out to me was these transfers are older. They're not shy in front of reporters, and they did a great job of just managing their message really well. They didn't get wordy. They answered the question, and that was that.
Well, speaking of signees, there were also two other guys that were signed earlier this week that some people had some questions on. The FSU extended Ron Dugans and Odell Haggins for, I don't know the details, Bob, but can you talk to us a little bit about that? Obviously, we have not talked about it much at the Osceola out of respect but there were some rumors that maybe something was going on behind the scenes and that maybe the staff may not come back exactly as it was assembled to start the year.
Yeah, Coach Dugans and Coach Hagens, they were operating on contracts that were going to expire on January 31st, which was Monday. And in the 5 o'clock hour, we got an email from Florida State saying that they've been given extensions, but no details have been released. So to be candid, we don't know if that's 1 year, multi-years, salary increase or not, bonuses, who knows. So I think from a positive standpoint, you've got continuity, and it never hurts to have Odell Haggins on staff because his interior linemen obviously consistently produce year after year, and he's put guys in the NFL. I think the area where a lot of fans were kind of questioning was, why is Coach Dugans back? And that's just purely based on the performance of the receivers in past years. The one thing I would just say to remind you, whether you feel good about it or not, is Mike Norvell was a receiver, coached receivers, and those are his guys. So he's brought in 4 transfers at wide receiver for a reason. And I think he knows where the receiving room needs to go. It's kind of an awkward situation, to say the least, because you don't want to see your coach going into the final day, literally the final day of a contract. But that's just how it worked out. And but it's good to see it resolved at the very least.
Yeah. So you got to, and listen, there was several schools today that have had coaches that have been let go. So National Signing Day is today was more probably about coaches leaving staffs than it was. South Carolina's had a couple of coaches that have left its staff. Arizona State has today. Anyway, so we think we know what FSU's on the field staff is going to look like heading into 2022. And what we found out, and we are going to do the same exercise in futility that everyone else has done with the 2022 schedule. But the 2022 schedule was released for Florida State on Monday night in a rather laborious and lengthy debut show on the ACC network. Took a full hour to get each and every game announced. I'm sure there was a way to get it sooner than that, but I did not. But Florida State will report early. They're going to play in week 0. And we'll talk about this a lot over the summer. But they open up with Duquesne on August 27th, which I'm sure that Duquesne is going to pay for Jacksonville State's sins of a year ago. So they will be the whipping boy for Florida State coming into the season before they head to New Orleans Sunday, September 4th to play LSU. They will have a bye on September 10th, then at Louisville on a Friday night game. I'm sure that was part – I would have to think that ACC agreed to that Friday night game with Florida State getting the early week 0 game. Boston College at home on the 24th, followed by Wake Forest at home on October 1st, at NC State on October 8th. Clemson visits Tallahassee on October 15th, followed by another bye before an annual rivalry that should be comes back to town. Georgia Tech will play in Tallahassee for the second time in, I believe, 3 years. Then at Miami on November 4th, at Syracuse on November 12th, and then a really interesting game before Florida with Louisiana Lafayette at home on the 19th. And then, of course, what everybody wants to talk about is Friday Night Lights against Florida, which I think is a great thing. I'll get y'all's opinion on it. But just as an overview, as a quick overview, we don't really know enough about these teams other than what we know about it from last year. We have nobody started their rosters heading into this year. But just at a glance, Jerry, what are your thoughts on how the dates line up for whatever it's worth?
Well, I think they wanted those two bye weeks, so they got them, and they're going to need them. That LSU game and then going to play at Louisville is going to be tough couple of weeks.
Well, they got an off week between them. Hey, Bob, let's cut back to you on this. Just your overall thoughts on the schedule as a whole. We see a lot of social media banner about it's unfair, it's backloaded, front loaded. We don't get enough buys. We're playing too many early. I mean, it's a. You know what it is. Everybody just get it. But I found it to be at first glance, a very balanced schedule. What are your thoughts?
I think they got what they wanted. They wanted 2 bye weeks because of the week 0 game. You play 5 games. You get a bye in the middle. This kind of set up just about as well as what Florida State could have imagined. I think if you were drawing it up, nobody's going to like that Duquesne game. Why do you get it? It's because you get to start practice early for LSU. Camp will open in July, as you said, Pat. Some good news is they think the Duquesne game is going to be set up as the night game, August 27th. Nobody wants to play that at noon or 3:30 inside Doak. That would be bad for everybody. I think the big thing, everybody's going to focus on Florida. I'm not in love with it mostly because of the difficulty of getting back to Tallahassee for a lot of people who leave town for the holidays. Tallahassee ain't the easiest place to get back to, whether you're driving or flying. So I just wonder, from the student standpoint, are you going to come back? From the fan standpoint, are you able to come back when you have family? There's just a lot of things moving around there that it's not as easy as, say, Saturday at noon or Saturday at 3:30. But I think it's something you got to do to help out the ACC as part of the contract, and that's where it's going to be for 1 year.
Well, listen, I want to get Mark's thoughts on it as a former player, but I like it because there's not as many games to compete against on television on the Friday night after Thanksgiving as there are on the Saturday day. Now, it's a thinned out schedule because they start playing on Thursday with several Thanksgiving games, actually, I think it may be only one Thanksgiving game in college football anymore. But anyway, I like it because you will have more eyes on Florida State. and whoever wins that game is going to benefit from it almost immediately in the early signing period. But Mark, you played at Florida State. It's still a marquee game, but I like the idea of it being a spotlight game. It will only go up against one or two other games. Some of those will not be great matchups. What are your thoughts as a former player on that game going to a Friday night?
Yeah, at first I was kind of, what the heck, man? But then as I thought about it, it's not like a regular game week where, you're a class and you got things going on, whatever, and this is on a break, and so as far as that goes, player-wise, student-wise, look, if the game has any relevance or significance at all, people will be there for sure. If we have had a really good year up to that point, I think the students will show up for sure. Just like any other game. So, I'm not as bothered the more I think about it in terms of it being on a Friday. There is a benefit, obviously, being one of the few games on that day, and that is something where you don't kind of get lost in the noise of all the rivalries that are going to happen on Saturday. So it's kind of like our stage. So it's a time for us to shine. So there's more pluses than minuses going into it. So I'm okay with it.
Fish, your thoughts on the schedule as a whole and Florida being moved to Friday?
By that time of the year, I'm so burned out by the high school and college that I'm just glad the season's over with. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't really affect me. I mean, it's a good game. It's a good game to just have on the final week. And I remember I thought at one time they talked about actually moving the game to the beginning of the year and playing it the first game of the season at one point. But to me, it doesn't really matter. I think whether it's on
a Friday. All year before you put him on the hot seat.
What?
You don't want your coach on the hot seat starting on game one.
Well, heck, man. Listen, I've always said, like, I just, you look at the LSU game, and I really think the administration has to look at this. I know they want to put better teams on the schedule and this and that, but Florida State's the only team really in the country that has to play Miami, Florida, and Clemson every year. And I really think they got to, if they want to turn this thing around, I don't think having LSU to start the season or these SEC schools is a good idea. That's just my opinion. If there's one thing I would change, I think they need a 2 or 3 like nice, easy games so they could go 3-0, get a little momentum. You get your team some confidence so they could turn this program around. But
yeah, listen, I think there are a lot of teams in college football, if we went and looked, had 4 or 5 really, really tough opponents. And so I understand what you're saying, but I think that there was a time and place for the Duquesnes of the world to be on a schedule. But when you're talking about expanding the playoffs, those teams need to go away. When you're talking about paying staffs millions and millions of dollars, support staffs millions and millions of dollars, now players are getting paid. You got to play the big boys every week, in my opinion. I mean, this is a fan-driven sport, and fans don't want to see the cupcakes, and the fans are paying the salaries, whether it's through tickets, booster contributions, or buying the products that are advertised on television during these games. I kind of disagree. Does Florida State, are those hard opponents when they're really good programs? Yeah, but you can look at any SEC school and they can make the same argument.
But they're in a conference with each other. FSU chooses to play. They have to play Florida because if there's like even a state rule for it. But having to play 2 SEC opponents when you already have to play in the ACC and you play the toughest teams in the ACC every year, I think yes, in a year or two when the program's in better shape, I agree. You play the LSU's. It's just this year they really need to get off a good start, and you don't want them to come out of the gate and get banged up in a game and you lose a couple starters and now you're trying to play catch up the rest of the year. I hope it works out for them. So
yeah, well, I do too. I hope they're successful no matter who they play, but I do think the times have changed on the cupcake schedule, and I think they need to get rid of it as quickly as they can. Listen, everybody wants to win as many games as you can, but you hear all these coaches talk about competition. This is why they don't say you come to Florida State to play Duquesne. They say you come to Florida State to play the LSUs, the Floridas, the Clemsons, and the Miamis of the world. Guys, if I had to ask you this question, if I set the over and under, and listen, there's a lot of research that's got to go into who they've added to these opponents' rosters, who they're going to have after spring. But if I set the over under for FSU at 6.5 for 2022, are you taking the over or under, Fish?
Right now, I think 7-5 is my prediction on their season. I think they could get to 7 wins. So I would say the over, but I'm not do not let Jordan Travis get hurt, because then I'll change. Don't let him get hurt in preseason or any spring. They better put him in bubble wrap. So
they can't do that, but it would be nice if they could. Mark, what about you? 6.5 over under. What you going over or under?
Man, that's right at it too, buddy.
Yeah,
good number. Of course, I'm going to be the optimist and say over.
All right, so you're going to go 7.
I say that with very, very medium confidence. I'll say it that way.
Bob, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, this feels like a roster that can get 7 wins out, and they're going to play in a lot of close games. I mean, you have to see the progression of this program that lost some close games, won some close games, and again, because of the portal, we think they're going to be better. But this is a quarterback-driven league too, and we've seen a ton of quarterbacks across the ACC come back. That's the other thing that's going against Florida State is when you look at these games, you can't just say, well, that's a win or that's a loss, because yet again, it seems like the quality of quarterback play across the ACC will be really, really damn good.
Oh, yeah, that little stretch between Louisville, Boston College, Wake Forest, and NC State, they're going to see 4 really good quarterbacks 4 weeks in a row if they're healthy. And listen, I know that you guys probably have not had enough time to actually study the schedule of each opponent. But just if you happen to remember, what is the one team that you think on the schedule that maybe people don't appreciate heading into 2022? For me, the game that sticks out is the Boston College game because of what we just talked about, the quarterback, and that guy's going to be healthy. So that's a game that I think maybe most Seminole fans are thinking is a for sure win, and I think it's going to be one of those games that will be very close because of the direction Boston College is going in. Y'all got any game that stands out to you as maybe one that
I think the NC State game, just because it's up there. It's just Florida State, even when they've had their best teams, have struggled up there to win. You go back to the Ponder game where I think he either fumbled it or whatever while they were going in for a touchdown. It just doesn't seem like a friendly place for them. I think that's going to be one of their more difficult games. I think the Leary kid is coming back, NC State's quarterback. Yeah. So I think they're going to be very good on offense. That's one of those games that, it's going to be tough to win. If you have to put a game at less than 50%, that's one of them. So
yeah, and Dave Doran was on the ACC Network on Monday night, and Bird basically said that this is as he felt as good about this team, or as confident about the potential of this team as he did last year's team. And then, of course, you got a couple of coaches that are basically coaching for their lives, which always makes for a dangerous team. So, Bob, anything stand out to you, or Mark? Any opponents stand out to you guys?
I think Louisville, even though we get the open week before it, after LSU going to Louisville, and their quarterback's coming back too, right?
Yes, he is back.
Yeah,
and the coach needs to win very, very badly.
Yeah,
I just was saying that Louisville's coach. I mean, if you go, it's not everything, but you go on their message boards. Satterfield is not very well liked for whatever reason. I think he's a very good coach. He's not a fan favorite, and he's on the hot seat. He had to bring in a new DC this year because their defense wasn't very good last year. But he's on the hot seat, and it's going to be a must win for them. He's got to win as many ball games as he can. So it's not an easy place. That's another place Florida State has not particularly fared well lately.
No, not at all. And that's why I said Louisville is we haven't had great luck up there in the past. I mean, we had some absolute nightmares up there. So I think, and regardless of what happens at the LSU game, there's going to be pressure because of the start we had last year to get off to a fast start. And whether we win LSU or lose LSU, either way, that game is going to dictate a lot about how we're going to feel about this team early in the year, simply because of the way we started last year, because that can't happen again. And so that's going to be a lot of pressure on us to perform at Louisville.
Hey, speaking of LSU, Brian Kelly got caught on Twitter dancing again with another prospect who I just read either signed or committed to Alabama. First of all, I cannot believe we have reached the point in recruiting where grown-ass men will embarrass themselves to such an extent to get the signature of an 18-year-old kid. I'm embarrassed for the guy. I really am, because that's not who his personality is.
I think they've been doing this for a long time. There just hasn't been social media to put it out. Man. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff we don't know about. Ask Marcus Dupree what coaches probably did that for him to land his.
Things that are better left off video, and that is
ask the guy at SMU. All right.
And nothing against Brian Kelly, but it just looks really, really strange. Does not fit his person. And maybe he and the wife go out and boogie on Friday or Saturday nights. I don't know. Maybe it's a dancing team.
They may be swingers. You never know, man.
Oh, my God. Now we've reached a new level. It's not what I meant by boogie nights. I just meant disco, man. I just meant disco. All right, hey. Speaking of coordinators, Miami just hired a coordinator. Familiar name to Florida State fans. Kevin Steele has been hired as defensive coordinator at Miami, and it seems that Mario is having a hard time putting the staff together. Fish, what's going on down there?
Well, I mean, there's, for some reason he takes his time wherever he's been hiring coaches. I've gotten this discussion with people. If you go look at his history of hiring coaches, he's done a very good job. I mean, you look at Satterfield was his OC at FIU. Jeff Collins was his DC. Avalos is one of his coaches that ended up at Boise State. He had another guy, Arroyo, who's at UNLV. He's had like 5 coaches become head coaches. He finds guys like Frank Ponce, who's now the offensive coordinator at App State, James Coley. So I think you got to let this thing play out with these guys. I really don't believe with the early signing period and late signing period now, there's a rush to hire coaches, because you really look, Miami's recruiting like 3 or 4 guys. What are the new coaches really going to do to help them out to land those guys? Mario's doing most of the heavy lifting. You don't want names to come out and then the guys seem like they turn you down, but you know how that is. A lot of times a head coach may turn a coordinator down and they save face by saying, I'm pulling my name out of the hat. So it works both ways. I think Kevin Steele, he's the first coach I ever met in this business. I met him when he first got the job at Florida State. One thing I can tell you, he's very entertaining. If you've never met him, or people that are listening to this haven't ever met him, he has a lot of stories. I don't know if they're all true, but they are funny. And he's a heck of a coordinator. I mean, at Auburn, they had top 10 defenses like 3 of the 4 years he was there. So it's not like the guy doesn't know what he's doing. He is on the older side for a coach. So he'll probably only be there for 3 or 4 years. And that's the history of his coaching career. But I think it's a good hire. And some of the names I've heard for offensive coordinator, one of them came out today, Alex Golish, who's at University of Tennessee right now, that's worked his way up the ranks as a potential offensive coordinator. I think you got to wait and see what happens with all these hires and then make a judgment. But overall, I mean, he's hired a good running back coach. He hired a really good O-line and D-line coach. I think Mark will agree with you that the most important hires are O-line, D-line, OC, DC, and strength coach. And all of those are the other positions, not a knock on those guys, but it comes down to those guys. Most of those other guys are mainly hired for recruiting purposes, and whoever they recruit is how their career is going to go on the field or off the field as far as their success or failure. So I'm in a wait and see mode. I think he's done a pretty good job with the early hires. He'll have the rest of the staff built out by the end of this week. So we'll see.
Hey, now working our way back to the schedule, one of the games that really caught my attention when it was announced was Louisiana Lafayette. Now that was sandwiched between Syracuse and Florida. And initially I was worried about that game when Billy Napier was the head coach, but he has since gone to Florida and taken a bunch of good players with him. So are you less apprehensive about the Louisiana Lafayette game now than you were in, say, November?
Oh, for sure, less apprehensive. Yeah, but no, I think Billy has kind of taken a lot of talent out of that roster.
Yeah. So I'm not near as worried about that one as I was. Hey, Fish, I got a question for you. This is getting away from the schedule and back to the coaching thing. And you talk to a lot more people around the entirety of college football than we do. But not Florida, excuse me, they wear the same colors. Auburn is going through some interesting times. They've lost 5 coordinators in about the last several months. What's going on? What are you hearing at Auburn?
I think he's a very good coach, but I think he's a wrong fit. He probably should have stayed on the West Coast and taken probably the Washington job or one of those jobs. I don't see him coaching at Auburn past next year. I spoke to one coach that just left his staff, and I'm not going to name names, but I did not get a good feeling from him hearing what he had told me about what's going on there at Auburn. I can't see him lasting past next year.
Well, I want to before we go, we're going to try to cut. We promised we'd keep this one short. We really haven't done a normal procedure for us. But there are several Florida State players playing in the Super Bowl on Sunday week. Jalen Ramsey, Alden Tate, and what is his Cam Akers is playing. So
Jalen Ramsey.
I think I said Jalen, but there's at least 3 players, maybe more. Who are you guys picking on Super Bowl Sunday? Bob, I'll start with you.
I'm going with the Rams. I think Cam and Sony Michel bring a pretty interesting punch there in the backfield for the Rams. So I know there's a lot of Bengals fans who've been hurting for a long time since the Icky Shuffle days, but this one goes to the Rams.
Mark.
I go back and forth on this, but I think I'm going to go with the Bengals because I just think Joe Burrow is a heck of a player, and I just think he's got championship blood, man. Guy's a player. I'm going with the team with the best quarterback, and I think that's Cincinnati.
Fish.
I'm shocked that Mark went with the Bengals, and I'll tell you, I'm a huge Burrow fan. Honestly, he's the next great quarterback in pro football, and he's unbelievable to watch. But games are won and lost in the trenches, and Cincinnati's O-line's terrible. And I just think the Rams are going to have at it with their O-line. I think Burrow's going to be under constant pressure, kind of like Mahomes was last year. And I think that's what's going to win the game. I see a competitive game. I don't think it will be a blowout, but I think the Rams will end up winning because of that D-line. I think you may see Aaron Darnold win the defensive MVP once he goes against that O-line of the Bengals.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Bengals. I've been on rolling the underdog card all playoffs, and it's done it most of the time. I had the 49ers and the Bengals in the Super Bowl. I was trying to relive my youth of 1989, the last time those two played in the Super Bowl. So I'm going to go with the Bengals. I think there's something different about Joey Burrow, and we may have a new NFL legend on our hands.
Joey Franchise.
That's right, Joey Franchise, which brings me to our last talking point, which I think will be our last talking point.
What, name your kid Joe?
No. Hopefully, I don't have any kids to name, Fish. I appreciate that. I'm too old for that.
Joe Montana, Joe Namath, Joe Burrow.
I'm too old for that. Tom Brady, the GOAT, the greatest of all time by most people's opinion, has retired. He played in 3 different decades that I was alive. It's hard to believe that he has been playing for 22 years. But Mark, is he the best you ever saw?
I mean, you have to say it. I don't know how you can argue against it. I mean, talent-wise, arm, all the measurables, maybe not. I mean, when I think about that, I think about Marino and Elway and those kind of guys. But I mean, in terms of playing the game and actually just being a winner and what it takes to win in that league, man, he's definitely the best. I don't know how you can argue against it.
Bob?
All I'm going to say is thank God he's retiring, because as a long-suffering Dolphins fan, I've been left deflated so many years and years. Now he can go on to retirement with Giselle and enjoy the beach somewhere.
Fish?
Oh, man, I'm glad he's gone too. Listen, he's great. And me and my son get in an argument all the time. He's actually in the car now listening. But, I grew up in the era of Joe Montana, Dan Marino, John Elway. I still look back and think those were the best quarterbacks. They took a beating. I mean, I just don't think the fans that watch pro football now realize how many big shots guys used to take. And I mean, I grew up watching the Dolphins going to a lot of their games, and Marino threw for 5,000 yards when people didn't throw for 5,000 yards. Now it's no big deal. But I mean, you have to give him credit for what he's done. I'm not going to knock him. Is he the greatest? I mean, I'll leave that up to other people. He's definitely one of the best. So, I mean, even if you say he's one of the best, he's still up there with him and Montana and some of the other guys that have played before him. So,
yeah, it's it's interesting. I've been watching this. They have a Montana special on Peacock that they've been updating every week, similar to what they're doing with Brady on ESPN Plus with whatever the player thing he's doing. I can't remember the title of it. But anyway.
I mean, Fish does bring up a good point. I mean, if you take Marino and you put him in this era, where you can't touch receivers, you can't touch a quarterback, what would Dan Marino have done, right? I mean,
8,000 yards. I mean, 60, 70 touchdowns.
Well, listen,
yeah,
I don't think Dan was on the TB12 diet, though.
Well,
remember, Dan.
I don't know if he could have
Dan Marino.
That's part of it too. I mean,
but Dan.
That's part of it too. I mean, training has changed, and how you prepare has changed, and the tools you have to prepare have changed. I mean, back then you had film, right? You had some poor sap like me splicing together film, and that's what you had. Now you got all the tools you had to prepare, the way the game's advanced, the rules that they're playing under now. I mean, you get those guys and Elway and Montana, and I mean, you put them in this era. Wow, what could they have done?
Yeah, it's like I was watching football with my brother. We were talking about the records that are falling, and some of them the new rules do matter. Others I don't know that they do. But yeah, it's an interesting conversation to try to go back between eras. And but hey, guys, with that, I think what Fish is trying to say is that we have taken way too long. We appreciate you joining us for our podcast today. We'll be back in the next several weeks. Talk a little bit more about FSU football and preview spring practice. But I want to thank Bob, Jerry, Fish, and Sully for joining us. And we'll be back next week or the next several weeks. And thanks for listening to Seminole Sidelines presented by Alumni Hall. And Mark, I'll let you sign us off as always.
Go Noles!
Thank you, sir. Thanks for listening.
This has been another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. To subscribe to the Osceola, go to theosceola.com. Go Noles!